If you're wondering how to celebrate Earth Day this year, invite yourself to the Como Sustainable Living Fair in Van Cleve Park, Minneapolis on June the 18th. There'll be workshops, exhibits of sustainable goods and services, a kids area, and food trucks. Music by Mac and Cheese. My next guests on Forum will be Rami, Selim, and Barbara Porwit, two members of the team making the fair happen. Happy Earth Day 2022. Welcome back to SPNN's Forum, coming to you from the Kwame McDonald studio. I want to begin by noting the yin and yang of the 50 states' relationship to energy and the environment. On March the 29th of this year, for the first time, wind turbines produced more electricity than nuclear and coal. Now, there are a number of asterisks. This time of the year, winds peak, and nuclear and coal plants taper off their output for a bit of maintenance. But hopefully a sustainable, positive, upward trend. So that's the yang. Now, what about the yin? The president has ordered 1 million barrels of oil to be released from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in Texas and Louisiana for the next 6 months. The White House estimates that'll reduce gas prices between 10 and 35 cents per gallon. Assuming that was all refined into gasoline for cars, how many tree seedlings would we need to sequester the carbon produced? 529 million, growing for 10 years. It's interesting that the president didn't ask people to drive less as a way of reducing demand and thereby reducing the price. Why is it that the politically expedient route is an 8-lane highway to degrading the environment? Recall my series on Forum is called Pushback Storytelling. My guests aren't victims. They don't bemoan inequality, hyperconsumption, and pollution as a life choice. They don't jabber, they do. In this case, we're putting together the Como Sustainable Living Fair to push back against taking rather than giving. It happens in Van Cleve Park, just north of the U's East Bank, June the 18th. There'll be workshops, companies exhibiting goods and services, food trucks, and a place for kids. You can tap your toes and maybe even dance to the music of Mac and Cheese. Before I introduce Forum's guest for today, I need to turn the kaleidoscope just a bit faster. I hope my next admission won't discount my usefulness to zero. I'm a member of the team helping to put together the fair. Was that a shoe that I heard drop? The first person that I want to introduce is Rami Selim. Rami's licensed as a building contractor. He was the developer of the first successful straw bale building in Minneapolis. He founded and is the executive director of Sunny Day Earth Solutions, a nonprofit whose mission is to teach folks how to live sustainably. He's a principal presenter at the Minnesota State Fair and the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. If you drive by his home and workspace, you'll see quite an array of solar collectors. My first question for Rami is, off the top of your head, what percentage of your building's energy is supplied by solar?
Well, right now, a few of the systems aren't exactly online, but as a whole, I don't know, probably something like 30%.
And that's currently, and if all the systems were online, about how much would it be?
Well, we're in the process right now of actually putting a big, massive array on the roof for photovoltaics, solar electric, and if that happens, that will be for sure pretty close to 100% of the electrical needs. And then my heating needs are going to be satisfied with solar thermal, and then we have some wood burning apparatuses and a few things like that. But in Minnesota, solar thermal unless you have a great storage system, you're going to get somewhere between 30 and 50% of your heat loads. Nothing too much more than that, unfortunately.
And when do you anticipate the PV system being up and running?
Sometime this summer. I'm doing a roof build-up, so I'm working with the engineer right now on that on that project. I got a great engineer I work with.
So can you give us a sense of how the Como Fair, how did it originate? Where did the ideas come from? Who was at a meeting? Who was having dinner?
Basically, I had just gotten done with another certification at the wood-fired pizza oven that I built for them in their community garden. And so I always call the person in charge there and say, okay, so-and-so and-so is now certified. And we just started chit-chatting. And she goes, well, you guys did that Minnesota fair. Why don't you do it at Van Cleve Park? And I'm like, sure. And then all of a sudden, at the next environmental meeting, that was actually on the agenda. So,
what was her name?
Kathy Knutson.
Kathy Knutson. And what does she have a formal position in the organization?
Well, she's on their board, and then she kind of does all the grant writing for them, or actually definitely does all the grant writing for them. And she wrote the grant to put this thing together. So
and
yeah.
It's the Southeast Como.
It's Southeast Como Improvement Association, and a lot of the money for this is coming from the Good Neighbor Fund.
And do you have any idea where those dollars come from?
Well, what that originated from was when they built a new stadium downtown. Part of their parameters was they had to give X amount of money to community projects over the next X amount of years.
I've forgotten that, but that's the major source of dollars.
Yes.
So you had some conversation standing near the pizza oven, and I can attest to how amazingly efficient the pizza oven, how quickly the pizza is cooked in there. So how did the conversation flow, and how did it begin to take shape as far as any formal relationship between the neighborhood group and Sunny Day?
Well, so basically at the next environmental meeting, then Kathy had put me on the agenda. And so I kind of explained what my ideas would be for it. So this will be basically patterned after the big energy fair in Wisconsin, which is, I think, on their 32nd year, if I'm not mistaken. And I explained kind of what it was and all that, because I mean, I don't think any of them had ever been to that fair. Mm-hmm. So I explained that, and then what happens is the environmental group votes within either right there or via email. I think it was via email. And then we have to present to the board, and the board approved, and they really liked the idea. And then they said, well, we'll do it as long as you run the event. And I'm like, well, I think that's the only way it can be done. But
so take one, all volunteers take one step forward.
yes.
Another team member producing the fair is Barbara Porwit. She's had an intriguing journey from artist to administrator in the Hughes Department of Medicine. She coordinates and manages a number of programs. She provides support to faculty. One element, among many, that caught my eye on her CV is, quote, implementing diversity recruitment and retention initiatives, including pipeline coordination. That strikes me as a tangible infrastructure necessary to create real change from an exclusive past to an inclusive future. Would you say I sort of grasped what that is?
Yeah, and in fact, it's interesting you would pull that out of many lines on my resume, because that's been a small part of what I do for.
That's what I was afraid of.
No. It's wait for it.
Okay.
It's been a small part of what I do in the research training programs that I manage for hematology researchers at the University of Minnesota. It's an NIH-funded program, and the NIH is very interested in diversity, building diversity into the research infrastructure and into the medical workforce. But it is challenging because we're working with postdoctoral research trainees, and unless you bring the diversity way down from the beginning, in the high school level, through the undergraduate level, get people into PhD programs, get people into medical school, we can't find them at the postdoctoral level.
Yep.
And so it's something we want to do, but it's always a challenge, especially in the state of Minnesota, where we have, our demographics,
Yes,
are
yes.
challenging that way.
Yes.
However, as it just happens, I was just asked to become the coordinator of the pipeline and pathways program for the entire medical school.
Ah.
So I'm actually going to be starting to help build that pathway from the ground up and hope to find really high quality, high potential diverse individuals and get them matriculated into our medical school and ultimately make change in the medical workforce in the state of Minnesota.
So that'll take up a few more lines in your resume.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm told that you grew up on a farm in central Wisconsin. Are there lessons you learned then about your relationship with the planet Earth that have stayed with you?
Oh, yes. Yes, my early childhood was in the city, but my grandparents were always out on the farm, and we always loved going to visit them. So when I was 8 years old and I was told, we're going to go and live with Grandma out on the farm, I was delighted, So it was actually really exciting to me that we would get to hang out in the barn and, run around in the woods and everything. And so we ended up, a family of 7, feeding ourselves off of mostly what we grew in the garden. If there was a vegetable in my life, we canned it, we grew it, we harvested it, and so there's something about knowing where a cucumber came from.
Yes.
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 Like I put that seed in the ground.
Yes.
I weeded it. I picked it. I got the prickles on my fingers. That. If you haven't had that experience, you don't know. You go to the store and you just see, you see all the array of material objects that are presented to us as consumers. And if you haven't had that experience to ground you, I think it makes a different life.
So would you say that one of the things that has stayed with you then is just, I would say, awe of the complexity of the relationship from a little girl putting a seed in the ground all the way to the family sitting around the table and enjoying the food?
Oh, yes.
So the complexity is definitely. Any other lessons that have stayed with you that you draw on?
Well, I was a child in the energy crisis in the 70s. We were out on the farm, and I remember seeing, President Jimmy Carter on screen wearing a sweater and saying, turn your thermostat down and drive 55. And I was, and then you'd see the pictures, the images on screen of in California, cars lined up for miles trying to get gas at the gas station. And those things made a big impression on me as a kid. And I was like, okay, well, then obviously we have to take care of this. We have to do this right. There's a lot of emphasis in the culture of America for our personal rights, but I think, if you look at indigenous culture, there's a bit more emphasis on obligation. What is not my right, but what is my obligation to myself, to my family, to my community, and to future generations? And I think that that's a lot of what I'm hoping that the fair will help, will help inspire people to embrace and come up with new ways that they can increase how they're living healthfully and sustainably for themselves, for their family, for their community. So,
Rami,
Yes.
as a student or a young family or a retired couple walking towards Van Cleef Park in Minneapolis on June the 18th, what are they going to see?
Oh, boy, a lot of things. So we're going to have an array of workshops, I guess, geared towards more of the adults. And it's going to be anything from solar to composting to, doing some small building projects that are more sustainable. And then, of course, we're going to have a lot of vendors to, I guess, kind of support this medium. And then, of course, we'll have a fun band, and there should be food trucks and, some type of food available, too, so you can just hang out all day and just have fun and learn some stuff. So we're looking at probably about 15 workshops and 5 demos at this point, plus a kids area. So if you have kids, it'll be
And what will be going on in the kids area?
Just a bunch of workshops, more hands-on, more like kind of craft related.
Are you going to do any of your legendary paint?
I'm gonna
kids?
I'm gonna try to. Currently, I'm probably gonna end up teaching a lot of adult workshops, so I'm looking for people to take those over, which shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I do make your own paint and make your own Play-Doh for the kids at the Energy Fair in Wisconsin, and it's just a ball.
And one of the things that should be underscored is these are made from not dangerous volatile organic compounds,
No.
but from sustainably harvested materials.
Yeah, it's all naturally based materials. I mean, some of the materials we use are actually in your kitchen cupboards right now.
Right.
Not all of them, but some of them.
And how would you describe the people who are going to be providing the music? How would you describe their style?
It's kind of like a Celtic folk band. It's just two guys. It's one guy plays the guitar and the other one does a ukulele or a banjo or something and sings. And they're a lot of fun. Actually, I went and saw them last weekend.
Barbara, would you give a sense of what kind of thinking the group was doing as far as when thinking about who are we going to invite to exhibit and present? What kind of thinking was the group doing as far as who do we want to embrace, who do we want to bring in, themes, those sorts of things?
Well, I mean, when we thought about if it's going to be a sustainable living fair here, right in our own community, what are the kinds of topics that we want, that people are going to be interested in?
Mm-hmm.
How can you bring sustainably into your own life if you're a renter, if you're a college student, if you're a, maybe a landlord even, or a business person in this neighborhood, or, families with children, or even retirees. And we're thinking we really want to present a lot of a spread of topics that can really appeal and be immediately useful to people. So we're thinking about things about alternative construction or green building, or even things like basic information about renewable energy, solar, wind, potentially geothermal, sustainable yard and gardening. That could be really interesting. Basic energy efficiency could be actually very interesting for students and renters, because a lot of times they don't necessarily know what to do when they're young and just getting started in life. So we'll cover things like that. I think that in general it's going to be a smorgasbord, but kind of like a small and intimate smorgasbord, where people are going to be able to meet each other and connect over these topics that are going to be interesting for them in their lives.
You mentioned renters and landlords. One of the exhibitors is going to be Center for Energy and the Environment, and one of the staff members was a previous guest on Forum. And one of the things that she talked about was they have programs so that renters can approach landlords and say, here's some opportunities, here's some funding sources, these are some things you can do to the building to make it more sustainable. So they have programs in place to help, and they'll be at the fair so people can stop, and kids, students who are renting can stop and learn more about this. Anybody in particular that we have signed up thus far, you're anxiously looking forward to meeting and seeing their approach?
You talking workshops or?
Both.
I don't know about meetings. I actually know a lot of these people, but it's always fun to have Mark Morgan down. He's
Why don't you a little?
So Mark's a really good friend of mine. I actually met him at the Energy Fair in Wisconsin, probably 15 years ago, I'm thinking. He's a sustainable builder. He's a solar thermal installer. He's a PV installer. His specialty, though, is straw bale construction. So he's done, I believe, 52 straw bale buildings in the Midwest over the last 20 plus years, and all but one are still standing and overperforming what he suspected. And so he does an array of workshops, and he has actually given me a blanket, just tell me what you want me to do, and I will take care of it. And so he'll probably do something like what renters can do on sustainability. I'll probably have him teach something like that. And his workshops are just a lot of fun. I'm kind of bummed I'll be teaching workshops, so I won't be able to see them, but so that's probably the biggest one, I would say. But and then my friend Kat LaCroix, who's on the Sunny Day Board of Directors, I'm talking with her about doing. So she does art from recycled metal, and so I'm trying to talk her into doing a workshop, something like turn your junk into art, and she's super excited about doing something like that.
Perfect. And I was going to ask you, if I'm an artisan that reuses and recycles materials, would this be a good place for me to exhibit?
Oh, without question. I mean, I'm trying to hit up artists, and I think even if you're not necessarily recycling all your materials, but I mean, because the local thing to me is a really big thing. So if you're a local artist sourcing local materials, yes, you're absolutely welcome to fill out an application. And all the applications are vetted, so they go through an approval process through the Sunny Day Board.
Let's see. So Rami, what would be a good reason for a business to exhibit at the fair?
Well, you're going to be able to obviously show your goods and services to hopefully people that are thinking more sustainably. And that's kind of a niche market that a lot of businesses have not really tapped at this point. So I'm not saying your business has to be 100% sustainable, but as long as you have that element to it, you can come to the fair and hopefully, show whatever sustainable or local or what recycled matter that you use for your goods and services.
And when you say element,
I mean, it can be as simple as, reclaiming and recycling all your office paper to do, whatever with. Like I know one of the bigger box stores here actually, all their scrap lumber, they use all that to heat all their corporate offices. So things like that, little niches like that, I think are just fantastic.
so as you say, the point is that you don't have to be 100% green,
Yes,
but moving in that direction in a strong, committed way.
yes, yes.
And Barbara, what do you think is a good reason for a U student to attend?
I would say just a chance to connect with others, both of their peers and also their neighbors. Get to know people that are right in the community, and also to learn something more about sustainable practices that maybe they haven't been exposed to before. And also, we're hoping there may be one more step. If we can inspire people and help them have fun thinking about sustainability, the next step is, activism. And we're hoping to have some workshops and also some organizations that will be there at the fair that perhaps a student will come to the fair, learn something, meet some people, and think, what is my next step individually and for my community?
And that is, I think, one of the strengths of the people who have already committed to being there, that there is a range of engagement from the quite personal, day-to-day. Bamboo Switch will be there, and they sell things like sustainable razors, toothbrushes, towels, toothpaste, soap. So all the way from the incredibly personal day-to-day, small scale, and then there will be some organizations there where if people are inclined to move politically, there'll be an opportunity to learn that. So there's quite a range of engagement.
Yeah, I think we're going to have organizations like the Ecology Democracy Network and Sierra Club Zero Waste Task Force, things like that, where students and neighbors are going to be able to connect and think about what they can do in the future.
So Rami, if a business owner wants to exhibit or a nonprofit wants to present, where's a good place to go for information?
So you go to the website, which is the Sunny Day website, which is sunnydaymn.org.
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
sunnydaymn.org. And then there's basically the whole website right now is dedicated to the fair, and there'll be about the fair, and then there's an application right online. It's a very simple application to fill out, and then and just fill it out, and then you can always contact the website, contact our email for any questions on who, what, when. But I think we have it laid out pretty well.
Thank you, Rami. And thank you, Barbara, for being guests on Forum today. And thanks to Steve Brunsberg and Terry Kaiser and Deborah Teal. Steve and Terry are in the control room. Deborah's out here behind the camera. Steve's the director of production and operations for SPNN. Terry's the director for Forum. If you have any comments or ideas for future shows, you can post them on the Affirming Flame Facebook page. That's the Affirming Flame. I'd like to dedicate this episode of Forum to Dmitry Muratov, editor-in-chief of Novaya Gazette, an investigative newspaper in Russia. Muratov shared the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. On March the 28th, 2022, the newspaper announced it was ceasing publication after receiving a second warning from the branch of the Soviet government in charge of censorship. In Russia, if a journalist writes of the war in Ukraine rather than the special military operation, they can go to prison for 15 years. I want to close with a riplet I wrote for the 2021 Earth Day edition of Forum. In Overshoot, the ecological basis of revolutionary change, William Catton uses the image of humans as miniature seas. I added ambulatory. The last word in the piece is spelled S-E-I-Z-E. We, ambulatory miniature seas. Is your eye a whaler or a lifeguard? When you wade, do you leave an oil slick or gentle ripples? When you christen a ship, do you name it Never Enough or Just Enough? Do you see an ocean of seas or a puddle of seas?